All right, everybody. We are now live, and I want to welcome everybody this morning. Senator Klobuchar, heartfelt greetings to you, to our participating business owners, our industry advocates, and members of the press. And to all of you watching via live stream, welcome to you as well. I'm Dean Phillips, member of Congress. I'm a small business owner myself, a member of the Small Business Committee in the House, and chair of its Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee. We're here today because representation begins with listening. And one of my mentors to that end is Senator Klobuchar, who travels the state doing the same thing I do, which is to listen to the stories of our constituents. And lately, of course, we've been hearing from a lot of small business owners with tragic stories of suffering because of the pandemic. And therefore, we've been engaged with many others in both the House and Senate in a 5+ month effort to secure additional small business relief for businesses that have been disproportionately affected by COVID, many of whom have been shut out of the previous funding programs altogether. In fact, some months ago, after 2 listening sessions just like this one, I spent some political capital and secured a commitment from Speaker Pelosi, who assured me that we would bring an additional support measure to the floor of the US House. And now Senator Klobuchar is leading that effort in the Senate. I think we'll all agree that small businesses are integral to our community. It's the social fabric, the cultural fabric, and the economic fabric. And we have representatives here today from the restaurants industry, the gym industry, and the live events industry, which have been disproportionately affected by COVID and are so integral to all of us. Omicron, of course, has only made things worse. In the last few months, the data is indicating more horrific stories about small businesses struggling to simply keep their lights on. And it's not just about the owners of the businesses. It's about the employees and staff and the communities that they serve. And that's why we feel so strongly that we have to continue to support them, keep the lights on, and keep our economy humming. That's why we are part of a bipartisan group in both the House and Senate, Senator Klobuchar and I, working with those across the aisle to find common ground. We are working hard to do so. And I remain optimistic that we can. So with that, it is a great honor and privilege to be joined today by Senator Klobuchar, our senior senator in Minnesota, who's been a remarkable champion for small businesses this year and during her entire 15-year tenure in the Senate, including her work on the Commerce, Science, and Technology Committee and the Joint Economic Committee. She also led the effort to create the SVOG program, the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant Program, which saved hundreds and hundreds of venues around the country, and equally importantly, the jobs that they create. The senator is keenly aware of the needs facing small business owners, just as I mentioned, and is leading, as I said, this effort in the Senate to find a way forward, which, as we all know, is no easy task. The senator and I are in regular contact on this issue, and it is a privilege to turn it over to you now, Senator, to get your perspective on this issue, and also the prospects of providing more relief through Congress. Turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Dean, and thank you for your great work and your business experience, which obviously informs a lot of your work. And I want to thank all the business owners and leaders on this webinar here. I know this has been very difficult. I literally can't imagine what you go through every single day when there's some new report of thinking the virus is, on the down, and then it comes back again, and the different rules and everything that's you've been dealing with. And I want to thank you for keeping people employed, for keeping in business, and for seeing, as the Duluth mayor can call it, the lighthouse on the horizon. So say, instead of light at the end of the tunnel. I thought that was a nice twist, because I do see this future as we see Omicron at least not having the devastating effects of some of the other variants, and also the fact that we've got the vaccines out, we've got now medication that will work again on more serious cases. And so I think we're going to make it through this. That being said, I have always been a big believer in making it so we can make it through it by having the government do what the government should do, which is respond in times of crisis. And that's why I was joined with Senator Cornyn in leading the Save Our Stages bill, and why I was a key leader on the restaurant bill, which while the Save Our Stages bill, we managed to get enough funding in it for the purposes that it was designated, which was not as broad as I would have liked it. We would have liked to include, for instance, gyms and minor league baseball and some of the event contractors, which Wendy is well aware of, lighting and the like. We were able to keep the venues, which had literally been zeroed out, many of them still in business. Many of them were the first to close and were the last to reopen. So I want to thank David Benowitz, the president of Craft and Crew Hospitality. We held an event together at the Block last year, highlighting the restaurant funding. And as David knows, the status of that is the restaurant bill passed, our Save Our Stages passed first, actually, during the end of the Trump administration, and it was a real bipartisan effort. And then we had it implemented. There were some delays, but we basically gotten the money. I think there's $1 billion left out of that, but we've distributed a lot of that funding, and the $1 billion that we're trying to repurpose for some other good purposes, by the way. And then the restaurant funding, because the restaurant funding was so much larger, just wasn't enough to cover all the restaurants, and which is one of the subjects of what I hope is our discussion today. I also want to acknowledge Ben Wogsland and Troy and Ann. And it was great seeing you last fall to talk about restaurants. Thank you. And thank you, Dean, for putting this together. So the programs that we put out there, which you're all well aware of, the Paycheck Protection Program was the first, PPP as it's known, helped some restaurants and other venues, but wasn't enough for the severe impacts. I always said in this pandemic, it's not one size fits all. Amazon's done pretty well during this time. So have some of our other retailers and businesses that are involved in things like hand sanitizer, masks, you can imagine. So there's been kind of a unfair differentiation for understandable reasons of how people did during the time. So that's why we followed with Save Our Stages, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. We know that certain entities like gyms and like many of our restaurants just didn't get the help that they needed. And so that's why Dean and I are joining forces across the Congresses, which is almost as hard as across the aisle, to try to get something done. Trying to figure out what that noise is. Oh, it's the dishwasher. Okay, good. So the bill that we're working on with Senator Cardin is a bill in the Senate that has the support of a bunch of Republicans as well. We've met a few times, Susan Collins, other people that are interested in this. Probably the disagreement is how much we're going to have total, right? There's, there's talk of 60 some billion for restaurants, 2 billion for gyms, how much total, and then how we pay for it. I explained there is some leftover money from stages that we obviously can repurpose. That's great, but that's not going to get us to where we need to be. So we need to also look at some other changes, and that's where there's some disagreement on how we do that. The venue that this would probably, we have our venues too. The venue, the bill that this would probably be part of would be the end of the year budget, which was just kind of transferred into the beginning of next year, or maybe doing a special bill, given that Omicron, as Dean pointed out, is still raging, to get at some of these issues. So that's what we're working on. I'm devoted to seeing this through, and I know Dean is as well, but mostly I want to hear from all of you. So thanks.
And Senator, I know you don't have to, thank you for your remarks. I know you don't have a lot of time, but the question I'm receiving most from business owners, both in our state and my district and around the country, is what can they do to support our effort to advocate for more support? So perhaps you can address that.
Sure. I mean, it's clearly going, there's, about 15 people in our group in the Senate working on this, but it's just going to their senators and reps, regardless of their party, and telling them that this is still a huge problem that we've got to get through, and that asking for their help. I think it's that simple. That's how we got stages done, and that's how I think we'll get this done. And when we do that, and when we do that budget, there's a lot of things that go on in that budget. The budget's bipartisan in the Senate always, and so that could be a good vehicle. But I want to hear. I can stay on a while longer to hear from some of the business owners. So.
Okay. Is there any questions amongst our business owners that if you want to raise your hand in the chat, one of our associates can identify you.
I'd like to hear from them about what they're going through. And
okay, well then why don't we continue? Okay, then with that,
yeah,
and then why don't we continue with the introductions of our attendees? I'll call on each of you individually, and perhaps just take a moment, share a little about your business, introduce yourself, and let us know how the pandemic has impacted you, and what additional state, and by the way, it also includes state. As you know, Minnesota has a significant surplus right now. I'm an advocate that we share some of that with those in the most need, including small business owners. So, but what additional state and federal relief would mean to you? So why don't we start with our hospitality industry attendees, and David Benowitz.
Yes, thank you, Representative Phillips and Senator Klobuchar. Happy to be here, and can't thank you enough for the support you've given both on a state and federal level, and this, the overall being a champion for small business. We don't take that for granted. So thank you so much. And to answer your question with regard to the current state of hospitality, and when I talk through this, I'm speaking on all of hospitality. I've talked to a lot of owners and operators within the Twin Cities area on a week-to-week basis. And the need is real for relief right now. As Senator Klobuchar pointed out earlier in the conversation, the funding that came last year and the year prior with the PPP and the ERC was fantastic and helped, but it wasn't enough. There's still a lot of struggling business owners in the hospitality field. And just last week, I received 2 calls from colleagues in the industry who operate multi-unit restaurants that told me that they're down 50% since the beginning of the year. And I keep hearing that over and over again. I got another call 2 days ago from another operator that primarily holds private events, and they had 90% of their events for January canceled due to the uncertainty of Omicron and just the nature of the different mandates going into effect in different cities. And I'm sure that's happening all over the country as well, with masks, vaccines, et cetera. So there's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now. And with uncertainty causes confusion. And personally with my group, we operate 6 restaurants in the Twin Cities area, 2 in Minneapolis being Stanley's and the How, and then the suburbs we have Pub 819 in Hopkins, Duke's on 7 in Minnetonka, and the Block in St. Louis Park. We have questions coming in every day, both via email and phone, wanting to know, can I come in if I'm vaccinated? Can I not come in? Do I have to wear a mask? We also have comments saying, I'm not going to come in until things regulate and we feel more comfortable. So there's a lot of confusion out there right now. And I'm sure a lot of the other owners are feeling the same thing.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn it over to Troy Redding. Troy.
Hello, Representative and Senator. I appreciate your time and your work on trying to help us out. I'm a restaurateur and own 3 restaurants. I've been in business for 6 years now. And going into the pandemic, we had 4 restaurants. I lost one mid 2020. We closed it permanently, and I am on the verge of losing my second restaurant. So I operate in the suburbs in Plymouth and Maple Grove, and then I have Holman's Table over at the St. Paul Airport. Maple Grove has struggled. It was my newest restaurant and struggled quite a bit through this pandemic. We received PPP 1 and 2, and we have worked diligently to apply for the Employee Retention Tax Credit as well as the RRF. I have to date received Q1 and Q2 of 21, my ERTC, but have not received 2020. And we did not receive RRF. We were not one of the lucky ones, so to speak. And due to those things, and the fact that we lost at the net operating income line last year, $775,000, we had burned through our PPP money. And a lot of that was due to taking care of and keeping all of my salaried managers employed and paying their benefits 100% throughout the prior year of 2021. Doing the right thing with the money that we received and taking care of our people has always been what we've been focused on, and the money's run out. So it's imperative that we get support. It's imperative that we get it quickly. As I said, we're on the verge of losing Maple Grove. And then to the venue aspect, because we have event space over at the St. Paul Airport, we're contemplating closing that down as well for the remainder of the winter due to the different city mandates and the feedback we get from our guests as to canceling private events and not feeling like they should be going out. We've had both supporters of the local mandates and people that say they won't come in because of those mandates. It's all politicized and it's difficult. So I implore you and thank you for all of your help, but just want you to know the urgency to a small business person like myself.
Thank you, Troy, and keep the faith and hang in there. We're going to give it our best shot. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Ann Spaeth. Ann.
Hi, Representative Phillips and Senator Klobuchar. Thank you so much for this opportunity to yet again speak to our experience. I own the Lynhall. We opened our first location in Minneapolis in June of 2017, and then had the good fortune to open our second location in Edina in the midst of the pandemic. And I feel like our journey has been sort of the tale of two cities, where our Minneapolis location probably has suffered the most setbacks between, the initial COVID shutdown, but then the riots. We lost a week. We're within 2 miles of where George Floyd was murdered. So we lost a week of service then, a second shutdown around rioting. But our Minneapolis location has also benefited the most from both federal and state support. It was successful in getting 2 rounds of PPP, the RFP, but I will tell you, we are quickly running out of that money. We went through our first round of PPP pretty quickly in an effort to bring back as many staff members as possible. Reflecting back on that now, there's probably some more strategy we could have used to spread that out a bit longer. But I will tell you that each time that we have received funding, it has been like at the exact minute that we need it. And I can't speak enough to how hard it continues to be. We're now under a mask and a vaccine mandate in Minneapolis. The level of discourse, I don't need to speak to you about that. The threats against our team members, it's just everybody's exhausted. But then I look to our Edina location, and that opened in August of 2020. We did not qualify for PPP because of when we opened. That restaurant had its own set of setbacks, but has also had the most community support. We, ramped up to open and then quickly were shut down again that November. We didn't have enough of a following by then to do takeout, so we ended up just shutting down. But again, we had no access to PPP dollars. We didn't qualify for at that time the employee retention credit. I know that there now has been some changes around that. And of course, we applied for the RFP, but did not get the Restaurant Revitalization Fund for whatever reason for that location. And yet that location lost about $90,000 in its first year because of the ongoing struggles. I can't speak enough to the struggles with staffing. I don't know if we need immigration reform in this country to try to solve for the staffing issues, but I am so frustrated with the level of people just don't want to work. And if it wasn't for our Hispanic and other staff members that don't have safety nets around unemployment, they need to work and they want to work. And I feel like there's a real missing pipeline there of support for workers who want to work in this industry, because clearly we have seen a reckoning when it comes to employees, and I just don't see there being a return to the level of employees that we need for staffing. Like the other operators, I can speak to how many restaurant owners I know that are on the verge of closing, some of which got all of the support, but the more that this drags on, we're just running out of gas and we're running out of support. Banks aren't willing to step forward. Landlords are over rent relief.
Yep.
We need continued help, and I can't thank you enough for all the support that you've given at the federal level. It's helped us continue to try to fight day in and day out to stay alive and continue to keep our staff employed. Thank you.
Thank
And
you, Ann.
Dean, could I just say one more thing? Just on the workforce shortage, I'm pretty obsessed with this because I just see that, Minnesota still has a strong economy in terms of what we're producing and our job openings and the like. But I really think, I'm pretty obsessed with 1 and 2 year degrees and training, giving incentive for students or retrained workers to go into areas where we actually have a lot of openings, including hospitality, including tourism, including coders and nurses and the like, construction workers. The second thing is what you just mentioned, Ann, is immigration reform. And, it's everything from lifting the visa caps higher, especially for where Minnesota gets some of our workers, to work permits, to a pathway to citizenship. And I just think the economics of this are so obvious. And I just, former Governor Dayton and I just did an event together on the Afghan refugees. We're going to have a couple hundred here, and we've got to get them a status so that they can work, right? And just crazy rules in place where dairy workers have to work, 5-7 years before their spouse can take a job in a town. And I just really think we need to change some of the underpinnings of legal immigration because, as you said, there's a lot of people that want to work. So
Wholeheartely agree. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Senator. Now we're going to move to the live events industry. And just so everybody's aware of the distinction, we have the venues, the stages, if you will, and then also the people that bring the people to the venues and the stages and all the correlated industries and support and service that wrap around that. And we'll start with Wendy Porter. So Wendy, turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Congressman Phillips and Senator Klobuchar, and we really appreciate this listening session today. My name is Wendy Porter, and I am the owner of Wendy Porter Events, which is an experiential event management agency based here in Minneapolis. And I'm here today not only in support of my 6-year-old business, but also as the chair of the Minnesota Live Events Coalition and as the vice chair of our government affairs group for the national LEC. We are 100% run by volunteers who are fighting to keep our industry alive. On behalf of myself and the other small business owners who have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic, I want to stress how critical it is for Congress to enact further pandemic relief legislation to help my business and so many others recover, not only from our devastating losses in 2021 and 2020 and 2021, but from continuing losses even now in 2022 because of Delta and Omicron. People say events are back, and if you watch Sunday football, you probably think that is the case. But day-to-day corporate events, which actually make up the bulk of the live events industry, and smaller indoor consumer events are not back. Those are the stories we're not hearing about right now in the news. And on top of that, we have a 22-month revenue hole to try to dig out of. Businesses in our industry have one thing in common. We all rely on the ability of Americans to formally gather in one place for live events. And yet only a small fraction of these businesses qualified for aid through the RRF or the SVOG programs. Our research shows that more than 90% of event industry businesses were excluded from these programs, despite suffering losses that were equal to or even more than those that did receive the aid. The live events industry includes a diverse array of businesses that serve and support not just the performing arts, which we've heard a lot about, but also the conference and trade show industry, fundraising and political events, consumer shows, exhibitions, fairs and festivals, small sporting events, and social events, including weddings. We are nearly a $900 billion segment of our economy, made up of 1 million small businesses and 12 million workers. We're larger than the American auto industry, and we've been forgotten. Despite sweeping shutdowns and now the reluctance of our clients, guests, attendees, and audience to gather, my business and so many others across the country have somehow survived, often through sheer grit and creativity. It's not easy having 60 to 100% of your revenues disappear for a year or more, and then to return so unevenly. To say we are hobbled is an understatement. We need your help to go on, and we've exhausted the resources that brought us this far. And now we are under mountains of debt that we didn't have before COVID. Instead of singling out a sliver of recognizable businesses to receive aid, we believe an industry neutral approach to further relief is the best solution to the ongoing challenges that we face. Congress really shouldn't be picking winners or losers, as we talked about at the opening statements. The risk of leaving behind hard hit small businesses like mine and businesses that really need and deserve to get help is too great. So I urge you, Congressman Phillips and Senator Klobuchar, to consider a $25 billion increase in funding to any new relief and legislation that's moving through Congress, including programs such as the RRF and the SVOG, and expanding those programs to include the hardest hit businesses in our broader industry. I can tell you that my business and my industry with assistance can recover from this pandemic, but we can't do it on our own. We did what was asked. We shut down our operations to protect fellow Americans from a deadly disease. And now we need your help to recover from almost 2 years of near to total closures. So as Congress discusses further relief legislation, we ask to not be left behind this time so that we can again become thriving contributors to the American economy. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention and appreciate your service. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy, very much. And next, we welcome Brandon Helgeson. Brandon. Are you there, Brandon?
He's muted, Dean, which the senators always screw up every time, Brandon. So,
Brandon,
I got it.
let's go.
Good morning, Representative Phillips, Senator Klobuchar, and other guests. I appreciate you taking the time to hear how COVID-19 continues to affect small businesses in the live event industry. My name is Brandon Helgeson, and I'm tied to the live event industry in a few ways. I own an event production company called Big Bang Companies based in Rochester, Minnesota. And I also represent the fairs and festivals segment of our industry in my role as the director of the Olmsted County Fair. I've been an entrepreneur in this industry since the age of 12, when I started a small DJ business to provide music at my local county fair. But for the first time ever, I'm facing the reality that my business might not survive. Like many in the live events industry, we learn new skills, develop new services. I even launched a nonprofit to aid other nonprofits in raising funds and surviving this pandemic. I tell you these things to demonstrate the strong sense of community and perseverance that echoes throughout our industry. Now, what about the impact? We all know that this is something new for all of us to navigate, including our government officials, and I applaud you for continuing to learn and work through it. However, we are here today because many small businesses and fairs have not received meaningful aid. I applied and was denied the SVOG grant for my business and my fair. My company saw a 90% decrease in revenue in 2020. 50% in 2021, and I've already seen a 30% cancellation rate in 2022 due to the Omicron variant. The only option that was available to me is an SBA disaster loan and to take on additional debt. During the pandemic, our local fair has barely survived, operating solely off donations taken in from some drive-in events and from me not taking a salary as its director. I'm here to tell you these fairs are an integral part of our communities and our ag economy, something that is extremely important to many Minnesotans. Agricultural fairs are the only entities that educate our youth on the importance of the agricultural industry in our world and allow small independent farmers an opportunity to thrive and grow. Many fairs connect urban citizens with rural citizens. They are rich in a history of community gatherings and celebrations. People associate fairs with food and the carnival rides, but all those things are put in place to pay for programming costs for 4-H, FFA, and open class shows and exhibits. There are over 2,000 fairs in the US worth $4.67 billion in revenue. A study done in 2020 showed the fairs had lost 90% of the revenue since the start of this pandemic, equivalent to $4.2 billion. And that was just 1 year. The figures are surely higher now. While the figures are important, the true cost and loss of these fairs is the impact it would have on future generations. After all, I'm one of those generations whose career started because of my involvement in local 4-H programs. That's a quick overview of the financial and business impact, but I feel it's important you also hear some of the personal effects as well. For example, my oldest son, excuse me, graduated from college in 2020. My apologies.
No, take your time. No, please. It humanizes us.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I knew this was going to be the tough part.
Yeah.
And instead of handing him a check to pay off his student loans, I had to tell him I had to hold on to money, not knowing how long I would be closed. This has also taken a toll on my health and my home life. As the owner, I also have to be concerned about how it affects my staff, excuse me, including 6 full-time employees, 12 part-time employees, and their families. When I do the math on that, the success or failure of my business affects 45 people directly. Not to mention all the other companies that we contract for services, not only here in Minnesota, but across the United States. I hope that you take the time to truly hear these stories and work with your colleagues across the US and across the aisle to find a way to get targeted aid to small businesses in the live event industry, so that businesses and fairs like mine not only survive, but thrive moving forward. Thank you. And again, I appreciate your time and your support of the small businesses and fairs in the live events industry.
Brandon, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your story and making it so human, because that's what this is all about. With that, please turn it over to
Brandon, also, if there's, I hope we'll call you after this event just to go at it once more to see if there's any way to get one of these grants. I'm sure you've tried everything, but we have had a few people that got turned down by the Small Business Administration that we helped. So there's no reason we can't try again. So, all
I
right.
appreciate that.
And that goes at the state level too. I'm very intentional about working with the senator to identify anything we can. So thank you. Dave Greer. Dave, turn it over to you.
Senator Klobuchar, Congressman Phillips, thanks for taking your time to listen to us this morning. I'm the owner of Porchlight Productions, an 18-year-old consumer show company based in Excelsior, Minnesota, that has produced the Lake Home and Cabin Show in Midwest cities, including Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago, and Fargo. The Lake Home and Cabin Show is a public event that brings together people who own or want to own a second home with exhibiting businesses that support this market. Nothing is more powerful than putting companies and customers together face to face. Unfortunately, the pandemic has had a huge impact on my business. I dodged the first COVID bullet in 2020. Our show season finished up before the US was essentially shut down in March when all indoor events were canceled. All the convention centers closed. However, the decay to my business was already being felt. Both booth sales and box office ticket sales declined in 2020 because of the uncertainty of the new pandemic. Porchlight Productions' gross income in 2019 was $801,000. Gross income in 2020 was slipping and had slipped $86,000 to $715,000. All of our shows were canceled in 2021 due to the pandemic. So the 2021 gross income, zero. How are we looking in 2022? I'm currently down approximately 47% in booth sales, and we haven't sold a ticket yet. That's an estimated loss of $1.3 million in 3 years. How is a relatively small producer in the consumer show segment of the live events industry able to survive these losses? Like any other business in our industry, I'm eliminating expenses. In March of 2020, I was forced to lay off my employees, 175,000. Convention centers were shut down, so I didn't have to rent the buildings, 125,000. I didn't have to pay a general contractor to decorate the shows, another 75,000. I didn't have to create collateral to promote the shows and didn't have to produce radio spots or television commercials, 80,000. I didn't have to pay media sources, television, radio stations to advertise the shows, 170,000. I didn't have to retain room blocks at hotels for our shows, a loss of another $65,000 to the hotels, not to mention the food and beverage revenues they lost and the revenue lost to the local restaurants in the cities where shows are held. You see, the canceling of our shows not only affects us, but it affects all the other small businesses that provide the services and support for our events. I did take advantage of the 2 rounds of PPP money, and had it not been for those funds, we probably wouldn't be talking today. But it is not enough. I, like many other consumer show producers, did not qualify for the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. My 2022 show season this year, right now, was cast into a dark shadow 2 days ago, as I was forced to make the tough decision to cancel our largest and most profitable show, the Minneapolis Lake Home and Cabin Show held at the Minneapolis Convention Center. The recent Omicron surge and the mandate by the city of Minneapolis requiring proof of vaccination or a negative COVID-19 test to enter establishments serving food or beverage has made it cumbersome and unrealistic for our valued guests and exhibitors of the show to assemble for what is supposed to be a fun day of planning and dreaming about their lake homes and cabins. The Lake Home and Cabin Show touches many attendees and industries. People need and thrive on in-person connection. Through no fault of our own, our industry continues to be devastated. Additional funding is sorely needed, and it will buy us the time to dig out of this 22-month revenue hole and to begin our recovery. A targeted grant program based for small businesses in the live events industry would go a long ways towards our recovery. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Dave. And now we're going to move to the fitness industry, starting with Kyle Henning. Kyle?
Hi, thank you so much, Congressman Phillips and Senator Klobuchar. My name is Kyle. I own and operate 2 Anytime Fitness gyms, one in Farmington, Minnesota, and one in Lakeville, Minnesota. I've been doing this since 2007 with a focus on bringing health and wellness to my communities. And the last 2 years have been a big struggle. I also sit on the Franchise Advisory Council for Minnesota and the 4 bordering states. I spend a good part of my day speaking with other Anytime Fitness owners who are just holding on by a thread. I do this for the health of our community and for my staff. We're a small family here in my fitness clubs, and I can tell you we took advantage of the PPP, both rounds. And that's been some of the only aid for fitness clubs that were the first ones shut down and the last businesses to reopen. And at a time with COVID, I think health and wellness is even more important today than it's ever been. And I just want to thank you, Congressman and Senator, so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to all of us here. I know how busy you are, and I know how hard you guys are working to help us out. And I just can't say, like, if it wasn't for the PPP, I too wouldn't be here today. And I fear that if there's not additional funding, we're going to lose fitness clubs, not just in Minnesota, but all over this country. And again, we're going to lose fitness clubs at a time when we really need people to take care of their health and their wellness, and not just their physical health, but their mental health. When we were shut down, that's the number one thing I heard, is that it affected people's mental health, not getting to go to the gym and have that healthy outlet and that me time that is the gym for so many people. So thank you so very much. I applaud your efforts, and we just really need this continued aid. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm grateful. And now I'm going to turn over to Ashok Dhariwal. Ashok.
Thank you so much for everyone for inviting us. My name is Ashok Dhariwal. My family and I own YogaFit studios in Minneapolis. We have 4 locations all in the metro area. So again, we've been impacted by a lot of the Minneapolis specific requirements over the last 2 years. We've been in business for about 6 years. We employ 60 people currently. We had about 90 instructors pre-COVID. During the past 22 months, as Kyle mentioned, we were shut down for 7 months. We were shut down 2 weeks longer than any other business, including restaurants, because we had group classes. So I just want to point out that 7 months out of 22, we were shut down completely. During which time, which I'm sure all the other small business owners can attest to, we still have to pay rent, which goes up typically 3% a year. Utilities, which I don't know if anybody else's Excel bills ever gone down, or Madagasco, Centerpoint, insurance. So all those bills we still had while we have no revenue. Our current P&L, my wife thinks I'm crazy to be in this business, but we lost $200,000 last year. When I look at our P&L, 200,000 in losses, not revenue losses. That's net income. Oftentimes I wonder if we're lucky because we're still in business, or we're unlucky because we didn't get out quickly, right, and come back some other day. Our sales are currently down 70%. Our customers are busy, just like all of your customers. They have to stay home with kids and things like that. We were qualified for PPP. We used it up very quickly with all of our employees, like all of you, kept all your staff in place, paid them all. We did no layoffs at all. We used up our local grants. My recollection, there has not been even a grant offered since December 2021 locally here, which is the Minnesota State COVID Relief, which actually left out our NAICS code by accident. So only gyms got funding for that, but no other group businesses, classes got businesses. So karate, yoga, Pilates, bar, none of us got funding, or if you didn't pay sales tax. So some of the requirements that are in place for some of these grants didn't make any sense to me. Another example would be right after that, there was another Hennepin County grant. And when I applied for that, I was qualified based on their criteria of lost sales. But they told me that they only had enough money for 1/3 of the applicants, 1/3 of the qualified applicants. So I said, well, why don't you just divide the grants by 3 then? So instead of giving everyone 15,000, we all get 5,000. And that was too late. So to me, some of those processes don't make any sense. Help everyone as best as you can, as long as we qualify for a criteria that makes sense. I think that everyone's stories about being a small business owner is interesting. I worked for Target for 14 years. There's no way they'd hire me back. And I keep thinking about why I keep doing this. One of the things is I really believe in what we're doing, helping people with their mental and physical wellness, including myself. Secondly, and I think most of you would agree, is what else would we do? If we shut down tomorrow, I don't know what I would do, from a job perspective. So we keep going as small business owners. And if you told us that this whole thing would end tomorrow, I don't think any of us would need to be on this call. We personally, for our business, think it's going to take us another 2 years to get back to where we were pre-COVID. 70% loss in sales. We're getting back maybe 0.5% a week. So the math is right there. It's over 1.5 years before we get back, assuming everything keeps going up. So the PPP has helped. The ERTC helped, the Employment Retention Tax Credit. Don't really know why it was taken away mid-4th quarter. So all of our planning of getting that money went away during the quarter that we were eligible for. ERTC, to me personally, was a great, simple way to get funding based on payroll. As I mentioned, there's no relief since January 2021. For me personally, I would love to be able to say, can we get relief for 6 to 12 months? Whether it's something as simple as, here's all of our rent, here's our payroll, something very simple to help us pay our landlords. For me, because the landlords, as people mentioned, they have to go back to the banks and they're not getting any funding. So when you have high rents in Minneapolis, at least, and I'm sure other places, and you have payroll that you want to keep these employees paid, we just need help to get through us for the next 6 to 12 months. We can't force customers to come to our business. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashok. Appreciate it. And last but not least, turn it over to Pat Crosby. Pat?
Thank you, Congressman Phillips and Senator Klobuchar. I appreciate you guys' time. I really do. Just want to say I applaud your efforts and working both sides of the aisle here, Dean. I think Congressman Phillips, and as part of your campaign promise, and I just applaud your efforts in doing so going forward. My name is Pat Crosby. I'm the founder of CrossFit SISU. We've originated in Wayzata, been in business about 12 years. And I got into this business because I really want to just help people. And I am part of a bigger ecosystem called CrossFit with 15,000 locations across the globe. We have 3 locations here in Minnesota as part of our brand. When we initially got shut down, I listened to Governor Walz and I told my team, I remember sitting in the first meeting the day we got shut down. I said, guys, this is no big deal. 2 weeks, we're going to ride this thing out, because that was the original message that we were told. And I was kind of laughed at by most people, because I thought, no, he said 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks. We'll be fine. We'll ride this out. Well, we know what the history is. It turned into 4 months. We were able to take advantage of all the PPP money that was out there. We were very, very quick to act on that. We had a plan in place. I have 5 full-time employees and about 17 part-time employees that are all professional people in some other career. They just coach CrossFit a couple hours a week because they just love helping people. So I think there's a strong passion for what it is that we're doing. But the part that everyone misses, and we're sitting here as owners, and we don't have a choice. Our choice is we have to forge forward. We have no choice but to just keep plowing ahead, but our employees don't. And so the mental part that hit our team and trying to keep everyone motivated was very difficult to do. We cut expenses just like everyone else did. We cut, obviously classes went away, so we didn't have to pay for that. We took our cleaning service that we had that was very expensive, got rid of that. So we pushed those people to unemployment. We went to our landlords and pushed rent back on them, just kind of shoving everything in different corners that we could just to survive. And we did survive. We lost 35% of our total client base overnight, which is a lot of money for a small business. But the hardest part is, and we've fought and clawed our way back. We're strategic. We're growth oriented. But the problem is the overall feeling of the community and of the population is everyone's terrified and they're scared. And our business has stayed flat for the last 8 months. We've had zero growth, if not to decline, which is a big problem. I just sent an email to a developer yesterday. We were expanding into a Shakopee location, and I had to tell him we can't do it. I just don't have the confidence to grow and to add. So, now he's sitting with an empty space that he thought was going to happen, and I just can't put the risk out there to go forward with a business that's flat to decline. So I guess I'm appreciative you guys are really putting together this money. We need relief. I feel like we're dealing with a long hangover from CrossFit or from this pandemic. And we did get the PPP money, and it helped us to survive, but we don't have money for marketing. I don't have money for bonuses. I don't have money for incentive for employees to build the team, to build the momentum that we need. And what I would like to see, in addition to some additional funding, is the narrative of the press and of the government to start talking about how to create an offensive strategy to stay healthy and have a strong immune system versus all these other mandates that are just creating more panic and more fear and keeping people from living. I think the vax is great. Everybody seems to be getting the vax, but there's no talk about having a strong immune system, no talk about being healthy mentally and physically. So again, I appreciate all the efforts, Senator Klobuchar and Congressman Phillips. I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Matt. I do appreciate you and all of you who've shared your stories and put faces to these challenges and very much humanized a terribly important issue that we're trying to elevate. And I want to thank you.
Dean, I know you'll maybe spend a little more time,
Yeah.
but I have to head to another Zoom call and maybe stand up for 3 minutes before I do that. But I really want to say the same. I want to thank you, and Brandon and Dave. I've already texted our staff to give you a call to see, if we can help in any way on this and see what programs ahead could potentially work. And as everyone else, I think the fitness people, what we're doing here, that we're trying to get the fitness, and the restaurants is a matter of simply adding to the program. And I just singled them out because of, and then the contractors, that is something we're anticipating with lighting people and the like, but I just want to make sure that we've looked at every angle of this for your programs and your events. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Have a great day.
All
Thanks
right.
for being with us.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Dean. Keep up
Thank
the good
you.
work. All right.
We'll get back to it. Thanks.
Okay, see you.
We have about 5 minutes left, and would like to ask if any of the reporters on the call have any questions. If so, just raise your hand in your virtual hand in the chat box, and May will flag it. And as we do that, I'll also check your Facebook for any questions. But seeing none right now, let me just take the last few minutes and ask all of you, just some of you have touched on this, but how many of you have taken on debt over the past 2 years? And if you want to share how much, I think a couple of you referenced it, specifically I know Ashok did. But how much debt have you taken on in the last couple of years, just because of the pandemic? If anybody
Dean,
wants to speak to it.
Yeah, I can go. Dean, I think for us, we've taken out at least 250,000. I think that the bigger concern is what are we gonna do this following year?
Yeah.
You know, so if it's gonna take us 12 months or so to get back into it with no grants, that's, I think, a whole different question than the past for me personally.
Okay, and thank you. Anybody else want to share what the burden? You don't have to be specific, but in general terms.
Yeah. Congressman Phillips, I would say we've been fortunate not to have to take on any debt, but we've had a loss of about $250,000 in revenue that we've incurred. I should say half of that we've incurred and the other half we're going to incur because we are in a recurring revenue model that 35% just hasn't come back.
Thank you, Pat. Anybody else want to speak to this?
Well, I can just say, like, we haven't brought on any additional debt, thank God, but all of our hard-earned savings for the last 13 years in business are gone. And I think, like, in a way that was, we worked our butt off to put money away for our future, and that's gone. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I mean, we've been hurt so bad by this, and I bet other owners have felt the same way. At one point, I looked to sell my businesses to get out of this industry, and I can't even sell them. That no one wants to buy a business that's down 30 or 40% in revenue and isn't seeing growth, right? And I think, like, so we feel like we're in a hole and we can't get out of it, even if we wanted to sell and walk away. It's been just defeating.
I'm so sorry, Kyle. Thank you, and that's a good point. I mean, debt is one thing, but tapping one's entire life savings is just as traumatic, and I recognize that. Anybody else want to address this issue of debt?
Congressman Ben Wogsland here from Hospitality, Minnesota.
Of course, Ben.
Just broadly, we did a survey with the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank here last month. 60% of food service businesses said that they took on debt due to COVID, and the average projected debt for one of those businesses was over $500,000. So we project that to be about 3.3 billion in debt for food service businesses here in Minnesota. So the need is very real, as others have said here, and we just appreciate your continued vigilance and work on this. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Those numbers are just staggering. Thank you, Ben.
Congressman Phillips, could I just
please,
speak to the idle issue?
Yes.
I have been trying to refinance so I was successful in getting that initial $150,000 loan through idle.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the terms changed and it allowed us to go back and refinance existing debt, I applied for the program. I have been stuck in limbo since the beginning of November, and I cannot get anybody to email me back, call me back. I went through the SBA Emerging Leaders Program. I reached out to representatives there. I can't even get a hold of anybody to let me know what the status is. And this is exactly what happened to me with the Restaurant Revitalization Fund for Edina.
Yeah.
I got stuck in limbo and then the funds were gone. And that's my biggest fear, is that if we are continuing to have to ride this out, I need to refinance my existing debt into those terms. I just can't. Yeah. I can't continue to manage through ongoing cash flow setbacks and issues. I mean, we're already down just because of this vaccine mandate, 50% at our Minneapolis location. So I just wanted to speak to that if there's anything that you can do through the SBA, I get the sense that it's staffing issues, whatever it is, but we're just in limbo, and it's so.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought it up. You know, as the chair of the subcommittee on oversight and investigations, our job is to ensure we provide oversight of the SBA and I've heard too many stories about people unable to obtain information and get follow-up. And yes, they, like just about every entity and organization in the country, are struggling with staffing, but it's still inexcusable, especially considering what's at risk. So we'll visit with you offline on this too, and do our best to assist. We've reached 11 a.m. and I want to thank all of you. Your stories are really important to share, both with Senator Klobuchar and me. We will in turn do so with our colleagues, and then to the public, the general public, that needs to know that they can't take our economy and our small businesses for granted. Many of you all of you make extraordinary impacts to our communities. As I said earlier, the cultural fabric and the economic fabric and the social fabric is integral to our future. And it is my intention, and I will not rest until we find some path to provide more support to all of you, so you can keep the lights on, keep people employed, and live to see another day. That's my responsibility, and Senator Klobuchar shares that, I know. So with that, thank you. Keep the faith. We'll be in touch, and hopefully some good news soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Congressman.
Thank you.